Cool. All right. Welcome to the Tempo Community Call. What month is it? November 2024. Yes, all correct, I think. Edition. We are going to review. I have a decent little schedule today. We'll go through this. I would encourage, if anybody wants to present anything, I don't really want to chatter the whole time. So if anybody wants to take any of this, please do. Otherwise, I'll just kind of work my way through. And we'll end with an AMA, which we kind of do always, but I think we're a little short on content, so maybe a good week for more questions from the community. So feel free to maybe think up some questions as we work through. You can ask like in Slack, or sorry, you can ask in the chat here in the Google chat, or you can zoom in a little bit. I think I can. Thank you. Feel free to ask questions in the chat or to unmute, whatever kind of floats your boat there. All right, I guess we can get started here. Agenda, Tempo 2.6.1 was released. There was really only this minor bug fix that I think is concerning, but I do want to talk about it some. I mean, the bug fix wasn't really that big. It was just we dropped a content type header on one endpoint, which somebody noticed, which was interesting that people are testing Tempo that tightly. But whatever, we fixed that. So that's pretty minor. I did want to call out this. We had some changes, enhancements, and a breaking change, which is very odd for a patch release. And normally we would never do that. All of these changes were to the Tempo query, process, which is most of you are not running. It's only required as the shim between Jaeger and Tempo. Red Hat does use it, and they submitted all these PRs, and they wanted us to get it in 2.6.1. So normally don't like doing this, but since it only impacted Tempo query, none of you are actually running this. And it was really to get some changes in for Red Hat before 2.7. We went ahead and did it. So just a heads up on some of this. Don't get scared by it. To be honest, if you don't upgrade to 2.6.1, it probably doesn't matter unless you really, really need this content type application JSON header returned on. I think it's maybe the search endpoint. I'm not 100% sure, but it was a pretty minor fix, and got some of these Tempo query changes done. So yeah, 2.6.1, kind of no big deal. For 2.7, we're kind of always working on the next release, and for 2.7, I want to give a heads up. It's primarily operations and performance related. We have been slamming features in Tempo for 2 years or so straight now, 3 years. We really wanted to get focused, especially on our side, also on improving operations and performance. And that's a lot of those changes are going to be in 2.7. So I've got a list of some of the ones that I wanted to call out. But I encourage anyone from the team, if anybody has anything they'd like to mention, please do. Red Hat, Andreas actually submitted PRs to get us to hotel tracing, which is cool. So we've been on the Jaeger client forever. And this moves us over to the OpenTelemetry tracer, which is really neat. Nice improvement there. Get up-to-date semantics, trace semantics. And honestly, I was doing some testing a week or two back, and our traces are looking really solid, better than I thought. And I did a couple of small changes to connect some spans that were not connected well. So I think our traces are in pretty good shape. If you do a huge query, they can get a little overwhelming. But for most people, I think they serve the need well. Performance improvements everywhere. Zach's been working hard on polling. We got a lot of memory and CPU improvements there. TraceQL improvements I've linked to, but I think there's like 10 already on tip of main, not in 2.6 or something. And Siraj has been working really hard on our tags and tag value endpoints with some caching and other just general performance improvements. Like I said, really, really want to get or make 2.7 be a nice performance boost on searching and also resource usage overall for Tempo. And then I'm actually working on some regex improvements right now. Currently, Tempo is using just ye olde Go regex, and that's fine. But Go regex is, I believe, optimized for predictability more than anything. And we are switching to use the Prometheus fast regex, which has all kinds of shortcuts. It makes some assumptions, so there will be some minor behavior changes on regexes, but we expect major performance gains in exchange, so it should work a lot better. And it'll also work exactly like Prometheus does, which I think might help some folks who already have an understanding of how Prometheus regexes work. It's likely this will not impact you, except make things faster when you use regexes. We do have some TraceQL improvements. I think mainly this has been mainly FAM working on these, although no, my bad. Hobby has also put in some good time here. But support for the OTel instrumentation scope, which is cool. So we've not been able to query that. I think we added arrays and events and links in 2.6. Now we're adding instrumentation scope in 2.7. That's a nice improvement. A couple more functions for querying metrics like average over time, min over time, max over time. And I really want to get top K in as well. So ability to ask for top or bottom K, 10. Oh my God, I'm writing Prometheus syntax. The ability to ask for the top or bottom series, basically. We've seen people in our production clusters running queries that sometimes return hundreds of thousands or millions of series. This makes Tempo sad and takes forever to return. So we're both adding limits in 2.7. So it'll refuse to return more than, say, 10,000 or 5,000 or configurable limit number of series. And then also the ability for the user to see, oh, I have too many series. Let me just look at the top 10 or top 100 or whatever. So expect both of those in 2.7 as well. Cross our fingers. Cool. So, I mean, I'm talking about how it's going to be operations and performance, but we are adding a couple of features too. So expect some improvements there. We also are deprecating things. We are removing serverless support. We put up an issue a while back. Didn't get a whole bunch of traction on does anybody care about serverless internally. It's blocking us from making some improvements, and it is just complicating the code base, and we'd like to remove it. So we are going to. And this should actually allow us to speed up the query path a bit as well, because we'll have to do less bookkeeping on the query path that we do for serverless right now. And then also the metric summary API. This was an early attempt at metrics, and we believe soon the TraceQL metrics will completely replace this, the abilities of TraceQL metrics. And so we'd like to remove this as well. Again, simplify the code base, get more focused on the features, and allow us to improve those instead of support a bunch of things. Summary API is more complex because Grafana calls it, so I think they're removing it first, and we'll probably let it live for a couple more releases to support all the Grafanas, and then eventually remove it as well. Awesome. Wow, that was 10 minutes. I went through everything. I knew this wasn't long. Team. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate that. Does anybody have anything to add to this? I did just kind of blow through it. I don't know. What do y'all think?
What else do we want to deprecate?
Everything.
How about V2?
That's a good call out. V2, I'd like to put up a post to deprecate V2. We kept V2 for, moving from 1.0 to 2.0 for those folks who still want to trace ID search. I don't know if anybody's using it. It does hold up our code base a little bit because it just can't do anything that Parquet can do. It would allow us to clean up some stuff if we removed it. It's tempting for sure. That might be a 3.0 change. We've been talking about, if you've been reading the blog posts, we've been talking about a new architecture, a queue-based architecture. This would allow us to reduce TCO, increase performance at the cost of having to operate a queue or pay for managed queuing services from any cloud provider. And that would likely be a 3.0 cut, a major rev, and that might be a time to remove V2. There's a lot of internal cruft related to that. That would be nice to clean up. Cool. All right.
I don't want to mention overrides.
I don't want to mention overrides either. That's right, overrides. Don't mention don't mention, done. No one say the word overrides. All right, we'll talk about overrides real fast. Thanks, Zach. we're caught mid-transition between an older overrides config and a newer overrides config, and it's just really stalled out. And I think it's been frustrating for everybody, including us. I don't know. I would love to get that across the line, but it's a low priority, and it's just a bit of a mess, unfortunately. It has been for a long time. There's a long-running issue that's like, how do these overrides work? Why are there two settings, basically? And it's very confusing at the moment. I don't know. I don't have good answers there. I think the problem is what we internally would have to. We are still using the old overrides internally, and it takes a lot of work to move to the new ones, unfortunately. So it's what it
We
is.
may want to eat that cost in the next year, though. I'm just guessing based on some of the conversations we've had about the way we want to change our deployments.
Yeah, that's a good call. I do kind of expect tempo to settle a bit after this architecture. We'll have a really strong feature set. The new architecture will give us the same durability guarantees with lower TCO and better querying. And I do think it'll be time to invest heavily in operations and code cleanup and really taking the database to a new level of maturity. We've really been heavily so focused on features that we just are moving as fast as possible. And it would be nice to take a breath, slow down with 3.0, and to just tighten things up for, frankly, a couple quarters. It'd be really nice. We also increasing our investment in Helm. Should mention that. We are going to start using it more internally. Traditionally, Grafana uses JSONNet and KSONNet. But we would like to move to Helm. It is what everyone uses. It's what the community uses. And we don't, as a team internally, have a strong sense of what our Helm chart does well and what it does poorly. And so this quarter, we're putting more time from our team into Helm, submitting PRs, understanding how it's used, and wanting to clean that chart up and get it in better condition. And I would like to thank the community for all the effort they've put into it for years.
Additionally, I think we can add some docs for things that the chart does currently that maybe come up as regular questions and deployment scenarios for folks. So hopefully I'll have a docs PR up for one such deployment operation.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. Don't mention Helm.
Yeah, also, okay. Don't mention. Don't mention these things. Overrides. We don't talk about these things. Okay. We will be talking about them in a couple of quarters, and we'll talk about how amazing they are and how much improved they are. That's what we'll talk about. All right, crew, anything else? Questions, concerns, anything you can ask about how to operate Tempo, what we're working on, what's on our minds, favorite foods, how many fingers on our left hand? I got 5. Anything goes. It is officially an ask me /us anything.
Who's got operational challenges? How's the clusters? Perfect in every way.
Hi, I'm gonna jump in. I talked to you a little bit probably last month about trying out the new Traces app. I'm from Integral. Hello. You guys were talking about Kafka queue-based systems going forward. I took it back to my guys, and they also raised that Red Panda is another alternative to Kafka, just in case you weren't aware of it. So I thought I'd pass that along.
Yeah, it's a really good call out. I think there's a lot of options on the table for people who either want to run Kafka or pay for hosted Kafka. And I really strongly believe we will lower the TCO regardless by getting down to RF1. Even if you're paying a service like Red Panda or AWS Managed Kafka or something like this. That's one of the reasons that I think I'm a bit comfortable with making this change and adding this dependency is because there's so many options in terms of things you can run yourself, as well as things you can pay for other people to run and get what you need right? And like you kind of get this working basically. So good call out, thank you. Red Panda, I mean, I think there's a long list of people. Confluent, right? Don't they do managed Kafka? They just bought WarpStream. Every major cloud provider has a money button for Kafka. And I think for small installs, for single binary people, like you won't even notice. There'll be a little bitty Kafka queue pod that is now running in your Helm chart that was not there before. And, you know, whatever, that's it. It will just kind of live there. So right, thank you, Suraj. That's a good call out, Suraj. We are writing to the Kafka protocol. If I say Kafka, I don't mean Kafka. I mean the Kafka protocol. And we're going to work to make use of the most common features possible so that your options and opportunities to use other services are as wide as possible. There is a potential future where we can drop this and build our queue on object storage, but we're not really willing to commit to that yet. It is something in the back of our minds. There is some work internally at Grafana to look at building queues on object storage. So we might do that at some point, but that is not an initial goal. The goal for a 3.0 for this re-architecture is reduce TCO, get to RF1, improve performance. And so that's what we're going to focus on. And then perhaps later we'll get to an object storage only kind of solution. Cool. Thanks, Lena. I like your bike little avatar there. I'm a big biking fan myself.
Thanks.
Like,
don't get him started.
Yeah, we could do that for a little bit. Do you want to talk about bikes?
Bring out the bikes.
When will Tempo 2? No, don't bring out the bikes. When will Tempo 2.7 be released? Oh, I got a couple questions here. Cool. Sorry, I'm looking over here. You're all on my second screen. 2.7, we work really hard to do 4 releases a year, every 3 months. And I think we've been really good about that. The only time we slipped was 2.0, because it was just such a huge release. And I would guess, given that 3.0 is going to be huge as well, and maybe that's the one that slips too. But 2.7 should be no problem. It should happen in, I think, January. Is that our target? Is that what gets us to the 3 months? Somewhere in January. Can somebody double check that? I think that's right.
I mean, you always commit here and then do the release, right? So now you committed January.
Sure. I mean, I think we've always hit it, haven't we? Am I crazy? I feel like we've been really good about releases. The only one I can remember that was late and was frustrating me was 2.0, but whatever. That was so huge. Totally get that slipped a bit.
Yeah,
So
we've been
2.6.
pretty good about it.
2.6 was September 3rd for the tag.
Oh, then, oh, my bad. Yikes. Yeah, you're right. It's not January then, is it? December? Yeah, maybe December, sometime in there. I was thinking our weird offset quarters. Normally we release towards the end of a quarter. So, right, I guess it would be sometime in December then.
Could be January with the holidays and everything, though.
We do, right?
End
That's
of year
called.
stuff, so.
We do have holidays. Can compaction levels, can you provide some guidelines how to achieve higher compaction levels? Higher compaction levels affect in a good way on search performance. Oof, that's a great question. Search is not generally heavily impacted by higher compaction levels or lower compaction levels. What we have found is that we are not deduping our traces as well as we thought. And that's part of the RF1 shift, is to get to a single copy of every trace in the back end. It was at one point, the goal of compaction was to dedupe, and it was not really happening. Compaction really just kind of keeps your block list low, which can help with trace ID search and can help with polling. But for most installs, I think just trying to get to level 1 or 2 and saving money on your compaction would be wise. I'd have to see what your block list length was. If you're in the low tens of thousands, I would recommend not worrying about getting super high compaction levels and getting to like, you know, super giant blocks. In fact, that's probably going to negatively impact performance instead of help. I have a strong belief that lots of smaller blocks is better than lots of or fewer bigger blocks, but we've not tested that well.
Yeah, depending on backend and concurrency and stuff too. Yep.
That's a good point. Fam, what do you got? Dedicated columns? What are you calling out there?
Oh, I'm just saying that's it's going to be a great way to help search performance.
Yes. Okay, right, good call. For search performance, look at our dedicated columns docs. We see really strong improvements for both pulling out columns that you query regularly, and more importantly, pulling out gigantic dumb columns like db.statement and db.crazyJSON blob. That's a megabyte. So look into dedicated columns. That's a great way to improve performance as well as reduce resource usage of Tempo. Thanks, Kim. Always on point with the docs links there.
Also, if anybody has topics you would like to see documented for the Helm chart, you can add them to that doc issue that I put in our meeting doc. We'd love to hear if you have any issues or areas where you're having concern or you're finding there's gaps.
Very cool. All right, team. Any other questions, concerns? These are great questions. I think if you are having search performance issues, search is the hardest thing to tune in Tempo, for sure. I'd say we have a strong search performance, or we have good search performance, but I want amazing search performance. That's part of what this RF1 change is about. And we are just absolutely constantly adding performance improvements to TraceQL. We really spent a ton of time on this. And now, like a bunch of ANDed conditions, and now we're getting to better or like more difficult queries. What's up, Matthew?
I was actually going to ask, what's the kind of target for the re-architecture with 3.0 or something like that? Is that something kind of Q2 next year, just general ballpark? Because we're in the process of migrating our engineering teams with logs and metrics into the Grafana stack and holding off on traces until sometime next year.
Yeah, I don't know, team. What's a good answer for that? We've said internally we'd like 6 months to see this running in production clusters, basically. So that, but we also kind of have to bundle it up a bit, clean things up, get it into release. We might even have a release where it's their experimental, like a 2, 8, or 9, and then go to 3.0 with it as the standard. I would love to see, let's say Q1 next year, have a really strong sense that either it released experimentally in Tempo, or really be able to give you all a good idea of when we expect a 3.0. Yeah, maybe like Q1 or and then maybe like Q2 would be a target for 3.0. Mario and Marty are not on this call. Hope they never watch it. They will kill me for giving dates on.
You can never give dates, just, at least, kind of ballpark, type of thing. So that's at least directional. So thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Matt. No doubt.
Out of curiosity, I've got another question here for you.
Yeah.
Is there any, there's anything on the roadmap to, kind of build out, some sort of sampling component? Because sampling is a big thing with tracing, and it's if you do an open telemetry, you kind of have to do that yourself, and it's a fair amount of work, especially across like a distributed team type of thing, where you could actually have each team kind of control their own the rules and stuff. Just curious, is that anywhere been thought about?
Absolutely. So this, unfortunately, perhaps there you go. Thanks, Suraj. We are building, like you've heard, possibly adaptive metrics, adaptive logs, these things, right? So our adaptive tracing project is working, or is happening right now. And the goal there is a lot of what you're talking about. So like dynamic sampling rules, where you can say for this tag, allocate fairly across, of 100% of my traces allocate across this resource namespace or team or something like that. So it'll make sure that smaller teams get some percentage of your tracing budget, essentially, as well as, kind of reactive to incidents and these things. So the bad news is some percentage of that's definitely going to be closed source. This is part of our adaptive telemetry story and cloud. I do hope we can make some of it open source, but I don't know what to say. Maybe I'll bring Sean Porter on for our next community call, and he can answer some questions there. Right?
Yeah, we just have a challenge with regards to because we're going to have to run things in-house just due to compliance reasons and stuff like that. So,
understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is one component that Una is working on right now, speccing out a design for, that I'm going to push a little bit for open source, but I can't make any guarantees there, that I think could be a cool part of OSS without giving away this core feature that they really want for a cloud, essentially. So I'd say stay tuned in. Maybe next month we'd have more details there. I would love to get maybe a member of that team on this call. Is Una here, actually? No. Okay. Maybe some other time. Cool. Thanks, Matt.
There is one more question, Joe.
Oh, my bad. Thanks, Suraj. Did I miss it? I don't see it. Am I crazy?
Question added in the AMA section.
Oh, the doc. Thank you. Doink. Is it possible to figure out how much latency traces introduces to my app for running tracing in prod? Possible to set it up in an easy way to toggle off? Well, Python. I don't know much about Python. I'm not going to be able to talk about that, I don't think. But you should be able to turn on and off your tracer with environment variables. If you're using either OTel or Jaeger, they both respond to environment variables. I believe you can set them. You could be able maybe do a canary style deployment or a red-blue style deployment, or red-green. It doesn't matter. They're just colors. Where maybe some of your pods had the environment variable to turn it on, some have it off, and you could get a sense. I would also encourage you to use profiling style tools. We do that a lot internally. In fact, we found an issue with the OTel tracers using a lot of resources, and we look to improve that. So profiling tools are also great for this, where they can show you, oh, okay, 1% or 5% or whatever percent of my memory and CPU is going towards tracing, and you can make some adjustments there if it's too much or you want to give more or whatever. So I would encourage you to turn on and off with the environment variables as well as use Python. I use the tempo distributed, I think it's the OTel collector. So the collector doesn't matter, basically. The pipeline doesn't matter here. You can configure with environment variables the client itself. So the process has special environment variables. You should be able to turn tracing off and then see oh, did latency increase or not? You should be able to do that, like I said, maybe on part of your deployment. So half deployment is tracing on, half deployment off, and you could compare latency metrics if you wanted to see what that is. And then again, profiling is a great resource to see, or great observability tool. Generally, totally recommend profiling generally, but in this case specifically to see what resources are spent on tracing.
I was just going to mention also that if the reason for the question is that it feels like the app is blocking, you might double check that the SDK is configured with batching. So that you are not putting traces in the hot path. And that way you're sort of batching them up and sending them in the background. That could be something that would impact performance on the hot path. But yeah, I don't know Python SDK either.
Trace's Explore app roadmap? I don't know what to say about that. In fact, somebody was asking about that. Explore app is total open source. So if you want to participate in the Explore Traces app, you can file issues, you can ask for features, you can chat in discussion. Well, I don't know if discussions have been turned on for this repo, but whatever. You can participate here. Boom. I don't think there is a, Ken might be able to correct me here. Is there a release schedule. I don't think there's like a release schedule or cadence for Explore traces. I don't think we've gotten to that level of maturity for Explore traces.
As far as I'm aware, we don't. But if we do releases and stuff, you can either check the repository for the changelog, or we'll hopefully be adding updates in the what's new in Grafana Cloud to provide kind of regular cadence snippets of what the new features are.
Right. I think we cut this for ObsCon, which is the only reason this exists. We should talk to the team about that and get like a regular schedule cadence. I think basically things get merged here and just make their way into Grafana Cloud, just stream out essentially without any kind of like steady release or like kind of discrete release cadence. Yeah, I don't know. I think probably as this gets more attention and help or and effort, and that I think we would probably move at that point to maybe some nicer releases or something. I think we're just moving as fast as possible on this and not worried about silly things like releases. Cool. Hey, I'm on the contributor list. Nice. All right, team. Any other questions, concerns? You can always ask in Slack. This is, of course, a great opportunity to get like direct synchronous feedback. Slack is kind of like best effort. People just chat as they can. But if no more questions, no more thoughts, we can move on with our days. Cool. Well, I appreciate all your time. Thanks for hanging out. Anyone who likes spiking, like Lena and myself, are the coolest people in the room. And we will see you all next month.
Awesome. Happy writing. Bye, everybody.
Bye, folks.